Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I am so lucky and so happy to have Miss Karen, otherwise known as Fwosh, on the stream today. How are you doing, ma'am? If I could even hear you somehow,
There, muted.
there we
I'm
go.
doing great. What a start.
Minor detail about being able to hear you. Tell me. I want to kind of just jump right into it. Let people know who you
Sure
are
thing.
because when I first met you, obviously I just thought you were an artifact pro. But you have a
Oh,
really cool, like, kind of back history on the Dota side and making videos that way.
sure thing. So yeah, I maybe about oh man, it's been a while now. 6 years ago, I made my first Dota parody. It started from a comment on Reddit, someone saying that the Frozen sisters seem like Lena and CM. So I just tried to make a little simple parody, and people liked it, so I kept making more. And creating content has kind of gotten me into the scene, as they call it these days. And eventually I started doing some more cosplay, some stuff like that, art. Just got really involved with Dota. I met some great people, made some great friends, and that has brought me to Artifact. So I actually suck at Dota, but actually I suck at probably most games. But Artifact and card games, that's actually the kind of genre I prefer more than MOBAs. So yeah, I was super excited to hear about the Artifact announcement when they first brought it up at TI 7, was it? Um, so very privileged and honored to be a part of the alpha to try it out and really get into the draft. So yeah, draft mode is definitely where I feel most comfortable.
Well, I know, like you said, that you've been doing this, like, you have this history making parody videos, and I went and watched a lot of those, and they're super funny. And even though I don't really know too much about Dota, like, it's still, like, it's a cool thing to see, when you have someone who's putting their energy in, and it's funny, and it's not, I don't know, it feels more natural. It doesn't feel like you have, like, obviously you don't have a team of writers, right? But, like,
No, yeah, I
not
wish.
yet, right? Not Saturday Night Live at Fwosh's house quite yet. But I guess, how did you actually get into Artifact? Like you said, you heard about the announcement, but how did you get in talking to Valve, or and even get started?
So that's actually a funny story. So I play a lot of Slay the Spire. I don't know. Have you played that game before?
I have not. I just heard about it yesterday.
Oh, okay. I definitely recommend a try. I love all sorts of draft modes, and I actually am pretty good friends with Ken Hotbid. And so a lot of times what we would used to do in Hearthstone is we'd watch each other, or we'd jump on voice and talk about our draft, and then we'd watch each other play Arena. And usually I'd get pretty high runs, maybe like, at least 8 to 12. And so we would just like watch each other play Arena, play a lot of card games together, and then he'd see me online playing Slay the Spire like every day. So what he did was, at the time, they were still early on in the alpha, and Ken decided to message some of the developers involved and said, "Hey, Fwosh plays a lot of card games, and she'd be a pretty good candidate for testing Artifact." And so I got a message from one of the developers the next day, and here I am. So I graciously accept the opportunity to be a part of the alpha, and most of it just came from me spamming a lot of drafting type card games.
Well, and there's a lot of us who have come from different games, and
Mhm.
you're kind of one of the few people I know that is in the alpha who didn't have, like, this extensive, like, Hearthstone history or Magic history or
Mhm.
Gwent or whatever it is. But the reason I wanted to talk to you today is because you don't have that background. You can actually speak to a lot of the people who are going to be in your shoes, right? Like, people who are coming over to the game, very interested. What do you feel like was your hardest thing to adjust to an Artifact, being that you didn't have, like, 20 years of pro experience on other card games?
The hardest thing was probably just adapting a new way to play. I feel like you don't really need that sort of background to come into Artifact. Artifact is like a whole new game anyways, so there's so many rules to learn. You would think that maybe you could apply some stuff from Magic. Maybe you can, but personally, I feel like, even as I was researching for casting at PAX, I was looking into the rules of Magic and seeing if there was something that could be relatable to the audience. But I felt like there just wasn't too much. Like maybe you could say like, oh, Siege compared to I think Trample, is that the
Trample.
term?
Yep.
Yeah. But it's not as much overlap as I think people make it out to be. Definitely, I mean, if you have a good sense of card games, I'm sure that would help. But if you just learn the rules and adapt while you're playing, I feel like it's just a very hands-on experience where you're learning as you play. But yeah, I would say the rules are honestly the hardest part.
Right.
It's so complex.
Well, and I remember when I first started, just trying to find the keywords and what everything did was the hardest part for me. Like, I didn't know anything. I was like, I thought that I didn't know how Siege worked. I didn't know how lanes broke down and collapsed. And I think what's going to be good for everybody who is starting when we can actually produce content is they don't have to worry about those initial, I don't know what the hell's going on type deals. Like, they can just kind of get into playing, right? And now, but how long have you been in the beta for?
I don't know the exact number of months, but I think I probably started back in. Let me take a look at the calendar here.
You're like, I have it circled on the calendar. It was a special day. We celebrate that day.
Yeah, I sat down, had a cake, celebrated a bit. But yeah, I would say maybe 5 or 6 months now.
Okay, so when you were getting ready to cast, now, I don't know if you had any other experience casting or anything like that, but what did you do? Like, what was your prep work for casting? Because I know you had spoken to me a little bit about it at PAX, but I wanted for the people at home, like, what was your homework like to get ready?
My homework. So we were all in a channel. So me, Slacks, Sunsfan, and Lumi. We were in a channel with some of the devs just to ask some questions beforehand. So I had like a whole, list of questions ready to go. So we were able to get the PAX deck lists a little bit earlier. And so my original homework was just like honing in on these deck lists and just like straight up at first, like memorizing what's on them to be able to like talk about what's in each and like the archetypes types of each. I tried to do that for maybe like a couple hours and then realized it was actually kind of futile. The best learning actually came from just playing the decks themselves. And once you had a good feel as you're playing, you pretty much memorize them naturally instead of just like looking at the deck list and poring over each card. Right. So there was a bit of that for research. And then also just again, like I mentioned, with finding relatable topics for people in the crowd. I'm sure a lot of people came from like Magic backgrounds, Hearthstone, things like that. So I was covered on the Hearthstone side. So I did a little bit of like, little boot camp for Magic as well, just to get an idea. Watched a couple YouTube videos, learned some key terms, and found some like good trivia too. I was like, oh, I didn't know like Mulligan, things like that. They all came from Magic. So yeah, I think it was just diving headfirst into card games and then just also becoming very comfortable with talking for long periods of time. That was also good training as well. I would jump on calls with Lumi. We would go spectate someone's game, and then we would just like cast like 3 or 4 every weekend leading up to PAX.
So that's good advice too, because we all, well, not all of us, but a lot of us content creators are trying to figure out how to prep, right? How to produce the best stuff. And what would be your advice to content producers who, because right now, obviously, we don't have too many, right? We've got maybe a handful of people who are actually trying to do stuff with this NDA, because it's really hard to make anything when you have the cloud of the NDA over you. But what would you tell new content creators who are looking to start? Where should they, like, how do they make their niche? Because obviously you have your like meme parodies and things like that, but with Artifact, there's going to be a lot of people. So how would you help someone to define their niche?
Let's see. So I think Artifact itself is like a complex game as it is. I think short content that's like personalized to you or whatever you think, I think is a good way to go, and I haven't seen that really filled yet, because a lot of these videos just go way in depth about certain drafts, concepts, whatever kind of strategies. But sometimes I kind of, since the game takes so long, I just want to open up maybe a YouTube video or even like a comic or some sort of like meme, who knows, that's just like easily digestible and like is kind of a more of a supplement to the game. So I think a route that I guess content creators for Artifact can go is just making very quick and short content, not necessarily like quality. I feel like we could use more quantity. Maybe that's just the void that feels like at the moment, because there's just like not a lot of people. But I'm really into just seeing like a flood of the same sort of ideas, so that there can be the birth of memes.
All the memes are incoming.
Yeah.
So, well, speaking of that, what is your role? What do you feel like your niche is? Are you going to be, because not everybody knows, but I know that you did very well in the last tournament. Going into the last round, you were live. But you just needed to get a little bit lucky on tie breaks, and tie breaks kind of went against you. But so you've been doing well on the actual competitive side, but then you also have this background with casting, and then this background with the memes and the videos. Like, where are you gonna go? You have all of this stuff. Like, how are you gonna juggle
options, it? Yeah. I think so. I personally don't really want to go for like the pro player, or like just continue
60 hours a week isn't your deal.
I really enjoy casting, so I'd love to like try out that direction, especially since I've already done like content creation for Dota. This is definitely something like new and fresh, and I'm really like excited for trying it. So any opportunities I think I can get for just casting, even if it's like small tournaments, things like that, any practice is practice. So I'm really excited to try that aspect out. Of course, I'm still gonna I'll feel the itch to do content creation. So if there's something that's funny, or something that like is just screaming for the opportunity to do something, I will probably also draw fan art or comics, make parodies. Parodies, they're taking a toll on me a bit. So I'm not sure. For Artifact parodies, it's pretty hard. Something would really have to like shine as like this has to be done. But yeah, I honestly, I like playing the game, but I don't see myself, climbing the ranks and just like.
Well, it's hard because I was talking about it yesterday. Is even for people like, I feel pretty good about my ability to play Artifact. I feel like in the closed beta tournaments that if I can get a couple breaks my way, that I could be in position to make top 8 and do that. But when the game actually launches and you have these people who are out there playing 40, 60 hours a week, and that's their only goal in life, it becomes a bigger hill to climb. But in your side, when you're talking about casting, you obviously have PAX West, where everybody got to meet you. Not everybody, but a lot of us got to meet you for the first time. Where do you feel like if you do content and you do this kind of stuff, do you have something worked out? Are you working with like BTS? Are you working with other folks? Like, where should we find you at?
Well, I'm kind of just like playing it by ear as well. Just like any opportunities that like present themselves, I'm just trying to hone in on that, like contact the right people. Of course, I'm good friends with the people over at BTS, so every now and then when they have like podcasts or things like that, I'm happy to jump on it as well. And I'm also just like keeping in touch with the rest of the guys, Lumi, Slacks, and Suns Fan, on what they're up to, seeing if they're still staying in the game, and like anytime there's something going on, I am just trying to make a buzz about it and like get myself in there. So
right.
But yeah, it's I suppose where I'll be is mostly I'll try to be streaming a bit more once the game actually releases. I'm hoping to cast some of the tournaments that the Artifact Discord is going to organize. Maybe if there's like a Reddit tournament as well, I'm happy to just like sit in on those, spectate, and even just like offer any insight I can.
So when you talk about like these tournaments, we have like Reddit tournaments, we have all this stuff. Now, you're still going to be losing a little bit EV right there, right? Because you're good enough to be able to place in those tournaments. Like, how do you, I guess, balance in your mind the idea that you're good enough to win, but you're also really great at casting? Like, do you feel like you want to be doing a little bit of both, or do you want to just kind of focus in on the casting route? I'm really want to focus in on the casting route. Like, let's be the premier casters in the industry. Let's travel around the world doing all this cool stuff, taking pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower when at a big tournament. But on the same token, there's this idea that maybe I have the skills to do it. Like, how do you, in your mind, I know how I work it in my mind, but in your mind, how do you balance those thoughts?
I think I'm pretty much honed in on casting and just doing content at this point because I really enjoy playing, but the competitiveness of it, and once the game comes out, the just sheer amount of like talent and like brains that's just going to go into this thing, it's going to be overwhelming.
Right.
And I'm happy to just watch. I really just love watching games and thinking about the thought process from both sides rather than just having it be one side as well. So if anything, I find that to be more enjoyable. So I'm pretty much honed in on just, I think, making it as a caster. Yeah, I'm sure everyone at some point also feels that itch to be like, oh man, if I was in like the hot seat right now, I would totally be making different moves. I'd be like styling. But I think I'm pretty much set on the front of just like, climbing that. And I'm happy to just, go all in on seeing how far I can go with just casting the game.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and that it's not like casting the game is such a bad deal, right? It's like, I mean,
totally,
there's a lot fewer casters, or a lot fewer people who want to just cast, right? Like, and people who, I don't want to say have the skills, because you can always develop these skills, but having the connections with Valve also helps. And in your case, having your face plastered all over Artifact goes a long way to these tournaments. But when we talk about tournaments, I want to get into the last draft tournament and how things went for you, because we had talked through the tournament because we were trying to schedule a time to time to do this interview, and I was watching in the leaderboards because I was like, oh man, if she does too well, then she's not gonna be able to do my interview. And so I wasn't rooting against you. I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I wanted you to do well, but you ended up obviously doing it.
An eye too.
So tell me about the tournament, how it went for you. If I guess let's talk about your first draft. I don't know if I think you went 3-0 in your first draft. If you remember how it went, and then also talking about your initial strategy when the draft starts. Sure.
So first draft was extremely happy. I opened my first pack, and lo and behold, I see Chen staring back at me.
Ooh,
so Chen's a rare, and for good reason too. I think in draft he's pretty strong, especially if there's some huge power creep late game that the opponent has. Just take it, or even just have the threat of taking it, because like you could just leave that passive on. I think it's a really solid first pick. And I think the way my draft strategy works, I'm still trying to like hone in on this exactly. But if I see a good hero, I would most ideally want to pick my hero early on in the first pack.
Sure.
And then the second pack is going to kind of more determine like what the pairing of the color I'm going to use with that hero is going to be. So very happy to see Chen on that first pick. So I knew I was going to go green something. I also managed, I think, on my first pack to pick up at least one Thunderhide pack, which is great for late game. I already kind of had an idea that the rest of my picks were then going to just focus in on like surviving to that mana 8, mana 9. So yeah, after Chen, I believe I have my deck list up here actually.
Oh, look I was going to say, do you have your deck list? Because that would be super helpful, because then you can see exactly where you went with it.
Totally. There's actually a couple unrevealed cards yet, so I won't get into those, but the heroes are revealed. I managed to draft a green-blue deck, picked out Omni Knight next, so that was also like, the moment I saw, I was like, whoo, two green rares, and Omni Knight is also just a very solid green. I felt pretty confident. But the other key players, can discount them here. The blue heroes were Skyrath, Prelix, and Crystal Maiden. So very squishy heroes, but very powerful in terms of like what they give for like how my deck was going to work.
Wait, I want to make sure I just heard that correctly. Did you just say Crystal Maiden was powerful? Did I hear that come out of your mouth? Because I want to make sure that we get a clip of that, because that's not going to age well, I don't think.
That's true. Yeah, in this case, she was pretty useful. I think along with green, that gives her some survivability to actually, you know, have her passive reliably proc on each of the lanes. So her passive for restoring mana is actually great if you have, like, you know, cards that you want to just like throw out there to kind of just like survive in that mid game. And that's basically what I had to do. The win condition for my deck was just to get to late game where I had that Thunder. I actually ended up with 200 Thunderhide packs.
I love it.
So as long as I got there, I would just boom, drop them in each lane, and that's guaranteed siege as well, which is just so powerful in draft. Yeah, that was pretty much the win strat. I also had one Missive Avernus, which was
okay, minor detail.
Key,
minor detail had a
minor detail
broken card in my pool.
Strong card, possibly my favorite card as well.
Yeah, and well, speaking of Missive Avernus, like how people at home, they obviously haven't got to play yet. Well, most of them. How busted is Missive Avernus on turn 1?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty busted. If you manage to draw that in your first turn for mana 3, because I think it's pretty ridiculous that you can't play it on the very start of like the whole entire match. It just has compounding effects, and if you manage to, if you're playing constructed and you have 2, it's pretty much like over. I would love to see the win percentage on that, but yeah, I think that's very strong.
Yes, so just a little strong. I actually played against someone the other day who had 3 mists in their deck, and it was actually during the tournament. And oh my gosh, I felt like, you know, when you hit their deck list and you see 3 mists, you just go, what did I do to deserve this punishment? What life did I like slap a baby seal?
What happened here?
Yeah, like it's not fair. But okay, so you had a really strong green deck. You had Chen, you had Omni Knight, you had Mists, you had double pack.
I had an Annihilation as well, so
I
could just play around that. It was a very solid draft, and honestly, though, the most memorable wins were that I would just leave Prelix alone. Like, surprisingly, Prelix would live and have a lane where, you know, she'd have at least 1 barracks, and then her passive was also proccing. And so the opponent would basically just feel like, okay, that's the dead lane. I'm never going to go into the Prelix lane. And so all I would have to do is just leave Prelix passively in whatever lane she's in, and then devote all the resources I have to securing the other 2 lanes. And since Prelix is blue, my other 2 heroes are green. That's where I can also devote my Thunderhide packs. So I could basically just win the lane by default wherever Prelix was, and then just pour all my resources into one other lane where I could just drop Thunderhides or choose to annihilate the lane I'm losing, things like that.
Now, with a deck that, when I'm looking at your deck from the tournament, it looks strong. It looks like a 3-0 deck, right? But I want to kind of get into a little bit more of the strategy of it. So when your game starts, obviously you're going to have that initial turn placement where your heroes go where they go, but what is your, like, how do you game plan? Like, obviously everybody right now will look at their opponent's deck list, see what their deck's doing, but in your mind, are you looking to automatically take lane 1? Does it depend on which heroes where you go? Or just give us a little bit of insight on how you do your future planning.
A lot of it's just dependent on what cards you have in your hand and playing around the monsters for them. So if there's something that like is key that you want to make sure you can cast, then you want to factor in your hand with your hero deploy and just make sure, like, okay, even if I have like a blue hero die this turn, will I be able to have him come back on mana 5 so that I can cast these spells, right? So I think a lot of it is just playing into the planning of your hero deployment around what cards you are guaranteed to be able to play. But yeah, it's funny because like I have a lot of very strong cards in my deck. But the other thing that we do whenever these tournaments happen is we open up a Discord chat and we're all talking about our decks, sending each other like, you know, the deck codes so that we could like look at each other's decks. And Lumi actually looked at mine and said it looked very scary.
and not scary in a good way, right?
Not scary in a good way. He's like, you're gonna have a hard time closing out games. Which I did think was true in a bit because a lot of my game just like relied on surviving past turn or mana 8, right? And so since my game was so like late game heavy, it was kind of scary if someone else drafted like a red black deck or something that just like killed my heroes constantly. But you know, proved him wrong.
Right? Yeah, you showed him what's up.
Exactly. The other thing that was interesting, and I hadn't really considered this as much, but Prelix, he said that it would have been better if I had that in my first 3 heroes. And what I did was I had her as the second deploy instead, because I kind of indexed heavily on just Prelix living at all. And that's when, you know, when the hero deploy comes up, I want to put her in a lane that's like the highest percentage chance of her getting put in front of like a creep or just surviving, right? Versus Lumi thought it was, since my deck was so late game heavy, thought it was better to have Prelix in the first 3, just to take that risk to see if she survives, and then starts that creep engine going and spawning every turn. But it turned out Prelix in the second deploy was actually pretty decent. I think guaranteeing her survival paid out in the end, and it would force people to abandon the lane, especially if they were playing red. It was just constant creeps. So it was very interesting though to think about, like, you know, where I should put it. And I almost had some regrets the first game that I played about, like, oh man, Prelix would have lived if she was here, but you know.
Yeah, well, I think though with Prelix being such an important part of your deck, that sacrificing the turn 2 creep is probably worth making sure that you don't just get it to, because it would be the same thing, right? Like if you placed it in a bad lane and it died instantly, you would be missing it anyway, right? And and on top of that, you'd be feeding gold. So like this way you can guarantee it's in the weakest lane. And so I think what you were saying is it's not as, you don't get all of the highs, right? Like you don't get the situation where, like, let's say 20% of the time it dies, right? And then 80% of the time you're ahead. So like I understand what he's saying on that side. And then, but on your side, it's 100% of the time you're going to be in the correct lane on top of it living, right? So you know, that goes a long way. But so in your second draft, where did like, you're 3-0, obviously you're top of the world, because that's like, even when I'm 2-1 after the first draft, I'm feeling like, dude, I'm gonna win this bad boy. I'm going. And but 3-0, you see yourself at the top of the leaderboard. What's your thought process before the first pack, and then what happened when you opened your first pack?
So it was kind of funny. We were all talking too in the Discord, but we were saying like, man, why did we pick green blue decks or these like heavy spell decks? They are so mentally draining and just like hard to play. Because like you have to just think about the key turn where you want to drop those high value cards. So we're like, screw it, second draft, let's just all go red black. Let's like go the quote unquote like brain dead colors and just be able to freely play cards without having to think too much about it. So I was all aboard that train, and I thought it'd be good practice too to get some all the colors in there. So I went red and black for my second one. And yeah, I thought it was still a reasonable draft. There were definitely some cards that I wanted to see that never showed up. But I think when you want to play the brain dead face draft, you would probably prefer to have 3 red heroes and 2 black. But I ended up with 3 black and 2 red.
Oh yeah, that's a little bit hurtful because you don't have the strength in the lanes early to be able to pressure just with your hero.
Yeah. And then that also just like forces you to have a lot more black cards, which sometimes, I think of all the colors, black, sometimes you just end up with the most dead cards in your hand. Like you can't really do anything with...
When you have a payday and you have like 4 gold?
Exactly, yeah. So they're just like staring at you in the face and like taunting you. So it was still a very effective hero killer deck, since, you know, with the 3 heroes, I had 1 Phantom Assassin, so I would just be cooing whichever lane that I felt I was losing and things like that. Or not even that. That wouldn't even be the case, because sometimes I would just want to like strand people there. But yeah, Centaur Warrunner, Storm Spirit, Legion Commander, and someone else that I don't think has been revealed yet. So.
and another random guy in there.
And another
that was pretty decent. Well, I heard something you said about actual like your brain kind of like just tiring when you're playing all of these blue-green decks and things like that. And I talked about this yesterday about how it's super hard to play Artifact for long periods of time. Like, because you have to focus so much on what you're doing, where to place things, and especially when you're playing like blue X decks, I think that those decks are very heavily taxing, because one mistake with AoE that you use, you lose, because you don't have, you know, a ton of it unless you have double Luna, right? But so tell everybody, how do you combat? I mean, obviously in this particular situation, you combated it by playing red black, but otherwise, how would you combat mental fatigue when it comes to Artifact?
I think sometimes you just gotta like step away for a bit, get some like fresh air, things like that. Because yeah, this game is very mentally draining,
Yes.
especially if you're playing some combination of blue. And it's kind of like, I feel like Artifact is more comparable to chess than card games. Like with Hearthstone, I feel like I just like keep queuing on and on. Like I don't really care win or lose, and like you just play whatever's in your hand mostly. But here you're like looking across lanes, you're trying to plan out like 3 steps in advance. And after a game, even if you win, sometimes I still feel like this like huge burden on my back just like lifted, and it's just like almost a feeling of like, man, I feel like I played that, like even though I won, there were places I could have done better, right? You're already like thinking about how to improve. Maybe you're watching the replay and being like, oh man, I messed up here. But I've told people before, this game is like really great at making you feel stupid.
Oh
like,
God.
If you misplay, you're just like sitting there like, oh my God, like I bet the other person thinks I'm an idiot too. Like, why didn't I do this? Right?
Yes, and that happens all the time too. Like, especially in tournament play, because everybody at home, I don't know if you know, but I mean, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but you have less time in the tournament. So you have tournament timer, and tournament timer is essentially like the Grim Reaper, like chasing you down every tournament. And if you have one lane that runs out of time, you lose the match. So, or excuse me, the game. So you make a lot of mistakes because it's hard anyway. You're getting pushed on time. And I guess the question I have for you is, how did you regulate that time? How did you balance being able to play a blue-green deck and not get into time trouble?
So I try not to overthink, honestly.
Okay.
I'm more of, I think Wife Coach was talking about this too, but I'm more of like a gut player, or like a
instincts.
It just feels intuitive. Like I won't try to like, do that whole calculative plan 4 steps in advance and like see the whole game or something. So if it feels right, if this is like, the lane I'm going to win, once that timer hits 15 seconds, that's enough indication for me. Like, I'm just going to play it. Like, I don't want my time to tick down anymore and then like second guess my decisions. So yeah, I feel like I'm pretty good about time management. All of my games were pretty short too. I would just mostly like be twiddling my thumbs after like at each match. So I think I would just say, like, if you're an intuitive player like me, just like don't overthink it. Don't like, backtrack, because oftentimes whatever you felt was right is going to be like turn out for the better.
So you said that you had a red-black deck going into the second draft, and the second draft is 4 rounds. So you had 2 losses. Talk to me about your losses, what you felt, like what you were up against, if you can say, and then what did you learn from those losses with the red-black deck, or even just decks in general? Like, how do you deal with losses?
So my first match, of course, was against Lumi. So we got matched against each other, and I'd seen his deck before since we were all in a group chat together. And I said, out of all of us, like before even the games begin, I was like, Lumi has the strongest deck. Like, he had a Time of Triumph, which, like, oh my God, if you can just make it to mana 8 and you have a lane with 3 heroes, like, you already win.
Yeah, you're done. Wrap it up. It's done.
Yeah, it's done. Anytime I see that card too in draft, like it's an insta take. And he had I believe Luna and some great board clear. So I was like, yeah, Lumi's draft looked very solid, red blue, control, and just like as long as he just plays it, like I feel like if anything, red black might not be brain dead deck now that I think about it. Red blue is almost just like, you just need to for these conditions to be checked, and once you make it, you make it. So not to discredit Lumi, but he did have just a very solid deck. So
Well,
I
it
was
doesn't hurt to
very
have a busted
disappointed
deck.
to be matched with him.
Yeah, like it doesn't hurt to have a crazy deck.
Yeah. And so I managed to take one game off of him. And that was because since my deck was just like very aggressive with black heroes, I had like a lot of tower damage and just I kind of just had to make sure by like mana 5 I'd already done like 20 damage to a tower. If I didn't, it was just going to be an extremely
That's a lot of damage. I mean, that's you know, in the first couple of turns you need to do 20 to a tower. Like that's a little bit over the average. Well, actually, that's quite a bit over the average of what a deck normally does. Like, what were you doing? Like, did you have a go wide strategy with that, or?
So I had Storm Spirit, and so his signature card allows you to like go between lanes. So basically, how I played the like first turn of every game was just like, all right, where are the open spaces? Where can I kind of make sure that I'm hitting the tower,
Bounce over,
and not a hero, and then just move them there. So if Storm Spirit was dying to someone, I would just like rolling Storm. I forgot what his signature card is. I would move him to another lane and just try to hit the face.
Yeah, go get him.
And Centaur, he also has that double
strike,
double edge,
or double, was that
so
called?
That
I
was...
always say double strike because of magic, but no, you're right.
yeah, that's such a strong and dirty card. Like nobody expects it because it's only 1 mana, and like suddenly your tower's taking like 20 damage because you put like 2 on him or something like that. So I was looking for open lanes for Centaur as well, or Legion to be able to hit the tower. Same with duels, things like that. I was just trying to clear as many spaces in front of my heroes.
Did you say duel? Did you have Legion Commander in your deck too?
Yes.
Oh my god.
So I just basically had a hero killing deck that tried not to make it to mana 9. So,
yeah. Well, I was gonna say because if you have
the opposite of my previous deck.
Well, if you have duel, obviously duel goes super hard, and then being able to randomly like if you can give something plus 16 and it doesn't die, like dear lord. I mean that's I've done that a lot, and like sometimes I had double Centaur and you get to do that multiple times, and it's really really gross. But so you ended up losing to Lumi. Do you remember what happened in the game, or?
I think there was maybe an opportunity to win in the very last game we had against each other. He was also telling me afterwards that he was constantly scared. But in the mid lane, I had just a single black hero, and all my creeps decided to go to the mid lane when I needed them to be bodies in the first lane. So it was just this big battle in the first lane, but my middle hero was slowly chipping at the tower. And I think if I maybe just devoted all my heroes in the previous turn to like the winning, because Lumi won in the first lane ultimately. The previous turn, if I deployed everyone there and just like went all in, I might have had a chance, I think. So yeah, I think that match definitely taught me more of like the importance of hero deployment. I mean, I've emphasized this before, but that's probably the most important part of the game. But especially when, you know, you have an exposed ancient, you might want to like take a little time in the hero deployment to do the math and just be like, okay, if I have these cards, then I can push down the ancient instead. So I think that's probably where I can just take some time to think.
Yeah, I think that is one of my problems is I sometimes think that, okay, they took the tower down. They're not going to have enough to actually take down the ancient before I take these other towers down. And then like I might miss some math somewhere. Like I might miss, oh, well, if they get a TP scroll or if they get some way to move this over or any number of different cards in their deck, it's really easy to kind of like just ignore that math because you feel like that 80 gives you such a buffer, right? But obviously, so you have a strong deck, you get the loss to somebody who's also undefeated. What happens from there?
All right, so after Lumi, and I felt like those games were very close to and still very enjoyable. After that, I just got ran over by I think I don't know how to say his name, but it was like Demore Key or something like that.
Okay.
But he had a very strong red-blue deck as well, which is like to my dismay because I did end up winning like I think 2 of the 4, and it was against, you know, other colors than red and blue, and it just it did so well in those games. Right. It's just killing heroes, hitting the tower, and super fast and over by like mana 8. but once I was facing red and blue, it's just like they kept controlling. And this, I think his deck in particular had a lot of creeps. And so, like I mentioned, I'm trying to just make room in front of my heroes to hit the tower. He would just every time just put a creep in front of it after I'd like spent all my resources to do something, and I couldn't do anything against creeps. So,
Little hurtful.
yeah, I pretty much just O2'd against his deck. Is just very powerful against mine with all of the creep blocking.
So how did you feel though? I mean, so you go, you're 3-0, you go 0-2 after being 3-0. You know, it's like the highest of the high, lowest of the low, but you still were live because you knew that you had lost it to like somebody who was undefeated, and then you had lost to somebody who had one loss, so you were still in it. Like, how did you keep yourself pumped up to make sure that you could try to win those last couple of rounds?
I was just kind of like playing my best. I honestly, so going in, I kept very low expectations. I like, honestly, having that this thing scheduled on Sunday, I already felt like, you know, there's no way I'm going to make top 8. But I did better than I expected, so I was really just happy with my performance overall. So I kind of just, for the last few games, I was like, doesn't matter win or lose. I'll just try my best, and happened to get matched up against, I think it was a green-black deck. And my opponent had Ricks, so it was just constant hero killing and just
give me the gold.
So much gold that I overwhelmed him with like all the gold that I had in the resources.
So when you're building your, you ended up winning the next 2 rounds. So you ended up finishing X and 2, and I think that put you in like 11th place. After
and it all came down to tires. So the final round, I was just like praying because I think I didn't do the math exactly, but I know if one of the opponents had lost, that would have put him into the 5-2 range and not the 6-0.
Right.
And so there would have been, instead of 1 slot for a 5-2 player, there'd be 2. And so that would have been great because that person who had lost specifically would have also lost to the person who I lost to. So Demorki or something like that. And if that was the case, then maybe my percentage would have been higher as well. So overall, that was like the perfect storm that I needed to happen, and it didn't. So,
well, but I mean,
that's the way it goes.
It's the way it goes, right? If it's like if you lose twice, we're hanging onto a thread that we can even make top 8. And so, you know, I was very happy to see that you had been doing well. And my opponent Mello, who beat me I think he beat me in round 3. He ended up making the finals, you know, and then Lumi did well in top 8 too. So it's like, at least when your opponents who beat you make top 8, it feels a little bit better. But
totally.
So, but how are you prepping? So I know that they haven't given us a date and they haven't said when, but like we're supposed to have another draft tournament coming up. How do you prep? Do you just keep playing over and over? Do you try different strategies, or do you just work with the team? How do you get ready for the next tournament?
I kind of just try to at least play daily, at least just do a gauntlet run, see how it goes. There's not much you can do in terms of prep, I think, for draft, other than like doing more drafts. But sometimes it just comes down to the luck of what you have. And I think the one thing that you can practice, though, is like the ability to see formulate the colors that you want to use during the draft, because a lot of times people will go into a draft and think like, oh, I want to play blue-green or something like that, or they see their first hero and then they just really want to like fit that shape into that draft. But sometimes you just have to be like, oh, well, it's giving me a lot of great black cards. I should go like green-black instead or something like that. So identifying where that turning point is and letting go of and dreams, I think that's something that you can practice. Otherwise, it's just going to come down to having like this holistic thought of your entire deck and just being like, what do I need? What are my win conditions? Like, do I go wide with creeps, or like, and am I able to like keep the creeps alive? Things like that. So while you're drafting, just keeping your win con in mind is probably the main thing that you can practice. But otherwise, just playing, I think, is probably the best way.
Well, you said, okay, so I hear a little bit of contradictory statement here, Miss Fwosh, because on one hand you said to keep your options open, but in the other thing you were like, my brain is dead, I'm gonna play red-black face smash. Like, So which is it? Is it keep your options open, or is it really try to like depending on your situation, you just want to kind of force a draft.
That's true. So I think I went into the second draft hoping that I could get like some face smash deck. So at the very least, if I saw like a strong black hero, I think I might have seen Phantom Assassin first. I was just like, all right, so I've got my black condition already, and then I would just try to draft around that. I knew like, of course, like that's the preferred route. Like I wanted something that's like a little bit like more lax to play. But of course, going into a draft, you don't know what colors you're going to play, and you just try to pick the best cards. So even though we were all like joking, being like, yeah, red, black, once you head into the draft, you're kind of just like forced to pick certain colors, whether you like it or not. But happened to get the red, black combo. Again, just not great that it was 3 black heroes instead of 3 red. I could have subbed out, but felt like it was better in spirit to just use the heroes that I had.
You didn't want another Keef in your deck? You didn't want Chief Keef?
Yeah,
I mean, come on now, Chief Keef does work, bro.
Man, I can't count the number of times that I see Fighting Instinct and I'm just like, why?
You just want to die inside. Like every time I play Chief Keef, I always have like 2 or 3 of his signature card in hand, and I just like I just want to choke out something. I don't know. It's just it's so hurtful because when you're not playing like a mono red deck, it's just dead. And even when you play it, it doesn't feel great. It's just like, oh, finally I got it out of my hand. Oh, all right, now I can stop staring at this awful card. But so
I've seen you're pretty big on the mono red, right?
Oh, dude, I go deep on mono red. Like I find that if I can, it all depends what the start. So like if I start with a Legion Commander, I almost certainly will be playing mono red. Like, and it's like or if it's Axe or Legion Commander, I'm almost like 95% to play mono red because being able to cast Duel and or Berserker's Call in every lane all game is awesome. And then also being able to get rid of Fighting Instincts like and put them on something that can duel or something that can Berserker's Call, turns out it's actually not horrible. But that's like one of the only times where Fighting Instinct actually becomes somewhat maybe useful because a lot of draft decks have hard time dealing with armor. Most decks don't run pierce weapons. They don't run pierce cards, period. Like, so you can do a lot of work that way. But I'm like one of the few people I know who ever play mono. Like, I mean, let me rephrase. I don't know anyone who plays monocolored strategies.
It's very rare to see. I think sometimes I just like see on the draft like games list, and I'm like, whoa, Rob's running that mono red.
Here's the mono black this time. Like it's so
black,
I just think that there's one of the cool things for everybody at home is being in the beta means we do get to test a lot of different strategies. And why I asked Fwosh about it is because I'll see a lot of random drafts in the viewer. Like I'll see people playing 4-color randomness or 3 colors or Meepo, like, which is horrible. Don't do it. But on your side, what are the archetypes of draft? Because I think everyone has their own ideas of what that is. But for you, when you're going into a draft, obviously we look for heroes. We do that. But what are your archetypes that you're looking for in draft, and what don't you want to play, I guess, is the other thing.
Well, from all the drafts, you end up kind of formulating this like tier list in your head. So especially like, when you have that card played against you, you're like, oh man, yeah, that card's really strong. The next time you go into draft, you're going to end up just picking or skewing towards those cards. And it's actually surprising because I think Lumi mentioned this recently too, but the rarity of the cards is actually sometimes influencing my draft too, because sometimes I'll see a rare or an uncommon, and even though I think like maybe Dimensional Portal is really strong, I'll be considering the rares as well, because maybe those have some secret synergy or meta that I haven't yet to understand. Like there's a reason they're rare or something. Yeah, I think going in like the first couple of packs that you open, you mostly want to just pick the best cards, not necessarily lock into your color just yet. So sometimes I just like see like something that I have to pick, like Mist of Avernus, even though I might end up going red black or something. Like it's a card that comes up that's good, and so I end up picking it. So as you're drafting, I think it's mostly just the archetypes you're thinking about is just like what is the usual win condition.
Right.
I don't think I typically think about like, I have this like this kind of archetype that I want to fit. It's just kind of very fluid, and as you go on, you're building it yourself.
Right. Well, you said that though, that, like the red black face deck. So like that would be an archetype. You had the blue green control deck. Is there any other archetypes that are out there like in your mind that you would like, if let's say you're talking to Lumi and he was like, hey, what are you playing? And you would be like, I'm playing this. And what other things do you usually end up in draft?
Well, in draft, it's pretty rare that you can actually say that, like, oh yeah, I have a deck or something like that. You have some control elements, but you're very rarely able to just feel like I'm solely like, control or just going wide, things like that. So it's like, I would ideally like to do this in order to win. So aside from those that you mentioned, I would say like control is another one, right? Like just the ability to have a lot of board wipe, and also just zoo, I guess, or like a lot of creeps. I've definitely done that in draft before because it's pretty difficult unless you have good board clear with blue to deal with a lot of creeps. So like if you're against a red black, you're pretty happy if you have just like a whole bunch of creeps in your deck because there's just not much that they can do once you go wide. And aside from that, I guess is a shit deck an archetype? Because there's definitely times where I'm just like, yes, this draft is garbage, but I'm going to play it.
There is the hot garbage fire deck, and where you have to basically ice skate uphill both ways in order to win, and you have to like completely outplay your opponent. Like there's those, and then that, and for everybody at home, that is real life. You will have plenty of times where you open a hero that's just not good, and you're trying to like basically re-roll into a good hero, and then you end up on your last one and it's Lion, or you end up your last one it's Rix, and you're like, well, we're in trash land now, and
this is life now,
right? Yeah. This is a life I decided to live. But so when you have one of those really just poop-tastic decks, what do you think? Like, do you end up going more multicolored so that you can just fit all the good cards in? Or do you try to, like, what do you do with the total crap deck? Besides
total crap deck, that's when you're going to try to consider, like, oh, maybe I don't want these heroes and sub in for the hero creeps, like Riley or, Debbie, and Keith, things like that. The hard thing is that maybe you had... and I think this is definitely true for if you're just starting out with draft, there is just like a color that you want to play because you've gotten a lot of good cards for it, but you just end up like not having the right heroes or something like that. If you don't have enough cards in general to even fill that archetype, that's when you're in trouble. And I think that's also just when you have to like definitely sub in with the colors or the heroes that you need. And it's not too bad. Like at least with black, Riley's actually pretty solid. I think she's almost preferable to certain heroes, like maybe even Lion. I'm not sure yet, but I think her signature card is pretty useful. So I'm like usually okay with that. But yeah, shit decks. If you just don't have good win conditions, like you just have a lot of dead cards. Sometimes you just have to deal with it.
Sometimes you run with it.
Not much you can do.
Right.
Yeah, it's like forced to include these cards, and then I think you just play it out. Sometimes you'll never know. Someone else might have a shittier deck,
right,
which is like what you can count on sometimes in draft. And some of those cards that you thought were garbage before, it's actually good practice to see like what they can do for you. Like there's definitely been games where I'm like, oh man, this card is so bad, but then when you actually play it, you're like, all right, it could work. Like I don't know, collateral damage or something like that. Maybe that extra 3 siege is all you need or something.
Yeah, you don't want to be playing too many collateral damage, though.
Yeah, you don't want too many of that card.
I mean, to be fair, I played against somebody who had 3 collateral damage on a black hero, and 9 siege is actually impossible.
Yeah, that's
you just take it in the pants when it's 9 siege, but it's good though. Like I like seeing different strategies. I like seeing what people come up with. And I guess in your experience, since you have been in the beta for so long, and I haven't, so I haven't really seen Constructed. And yesterday, Frozen talked about the state of Constructed and how he was kind of worried about the power level of decks and different things like that. Can you tell us a little bit of your experience on the Constructed side and how you kind of feel about it?
Yeah, so early on, there weren't any draft tournaments. It was just mostly testing out Constructed. And this was also kind of like when I just started playing too. And so the kind of thought process that new players go into Artifact is just like, oh, red is so strong. Bristleback is like the strongest hero in the game. I don't understand how like everyone's not playing like Bristleback and things like that. And so in the first two constructed tournaments, I went red green. And I think there were like a couple like, archetypes floating around. People were definitely like crafting decks and like kind of discussing what was strong and things like that. But I went with what was comfortable, and at that time it was just red and green, and it was very straightforward to play, just like keep heroes alive, summon more things, keep those alive too, and just hope for the best. So I actually don't have as much experience with like playing other constructed decks, because I think there were only like 2 tournaments for constructed, and I just like, since I was so new to it, I just went with my comfort zone of red green each time. But definitely great to see what other people were playing too. That's, I think, when I got to realize how strong blue was, and also see a bit more of the black deck. There was also a very cool, I think, red black gold generating deck.
Yeah, like a gold rush deck.
Sorry, what was that?
Like a gold rush deck, like just makes a bunch of gold, buys random stuff.
Makes a bunch of gold, and actually prioritize the mercenary exiles a lot. Ran 3 mercenary exiles, some paydays, and you would just like beef up these mercenary exiles until they're like an unstoppable force.
20 power, 26 toughness, whatever it works out to be.
Ridiculous. But yeah, it was fun to see those kinds of decks and constructed and be like, oh wow, I could totally play this game in a different way, instead of just me smash face, red green.
Me smash face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a whole other game, and I prefer draft, but constructed is fun to see what kind of metas develop.
Well, but I guess the question then is why, and I get this question all the time, why do people prefer playing draft as opposed to playing constructed? Because I think like the Reddit universe and Artifact universe is getting a little bit concerned, because that's all they hear is like, oh man, everybody loves draft. What about constructed? That's like going to be the tournament. That's what I want to play. Like, I don't want to spend money on draft. Like, why do people like draft more? Or, and I guess not everybody, but why do you like draft more than constructed?
I think, I'm a little biased because I tend to just like those drafting type games like Spire, like Hearthstone Arena, things like that. But I think honestly at the moment it's just that the player pool is so small that there isn't enough metas or like types of decks or even people playing constructed for it to be like fresh. But draft is just like, front of mind. You just go in there with a fresh deck every time. Currently, in alpha, we're not paying for those draft cards. Yeah. So that's definitely a great selling point. So yeah, it's great to just kind of have also that guarantee of like equal footing. Like you both have that ability to draft the double Luna or something. Like there's that chance, and it's a little bit like gambling. And I think that's why it's a little more addictive than constructed, because you're like, taking that risk, seeing if you can get those right colors or that right combo, and it becomes a moment of like, oh, I can't wait to just murder someone with this deck right now.
I'm gonna get them. Like,
it's not like someone is gonna see my deck list and just roll their eyes.
Yeah, they're gonna be super pissy.
I think that's just a very fun feeling to me. Whereas for constructed, it's like a whole another level of playing where you're just like, okay, here are the cards I have to play around. It's like really signing yourself up for some like intense thinking.
Well, it's funny because like if I could go to the casino and play like Pai Gow and like just have it be that like if I'm good at Pai Gow, I could destroy the other people around me. Like that would be so sweet. And totally. But it doesn't really work quite that way. But when we talk about draft though, in the beta, everyone, I don't say everyone, but pretty much everyone does a ton of drafting. It's the flavor of the moment. It's what everybody's doing. But a lot of people on Reddit and on Twitter and things like that are super concerned about the cost of draft. Now, Valve hasn't told us anything about how much it's going to cost or how it's going to work. But in your mind, because again, I have my ideas because I came from Magic, but because you've come from a whole different situation, what are your ideas when it comes to how do we make draft work and how do we bring people in on that side because it is so fun?
I really like the Hearthstone model actually of just you pay for the draft, you don't get to keep the cards, and then depending on how well you do, then you are rewarded based on your performance. So just that initial fee, probably like I would say, I don't know, less than $5. So like $3 to do a draft, and then you get to play 5 games, and if you like win all 5, maybe you get like free packs or something like that. So I would love to just have a mode where it's like low cost of entry. Because otherwise, I mean, it would be great to have both, right? That's like the ideal world. Like, if you could have the draft where you can keep the cards.
Give me that draft.
Then you pay like a larger sum up front, right? It's like basically you're buying the decks or the packs and then drafting from them. But of course, you only want to be matched against people who are in the same situation because otherwise, if you're thinking about like, as you're drafting, what you potentially want to keep forever,
right?
Then you're going to have like a different style of drafting. People are just going to have very strong cards, but not necessarily like the deck built around them.
Right, the synergies.
Yeah, the synergies. So, it'd be great to have both, but I think having that option of just doing a simple draft mode for now without keeping the cards would be best in my opinion.
Yeah, I think having a phantom draft would go a long way, especially if we can keep it cheap. And granted, everyone has a different definition of cheap because it's kind of like what your initial thought was. Like I was like, less than $5 and whatever. And I got dragged across Reddit about saying that like even $3, like they're like $3 is too much for a draft, and I'm like, $3 is too like. Artifact, and granted, I don't know what the economy of Artifact is going to look like, but I feel that it's still going to be a not cheap game. It's not going to be like a dirt cheap. You can't play it like you play Fortnite, right? Like where you can play a game and never put any money in and do it that way. And if you're going to be a competitive player, you're going to have to play constructed. You're going to have to play draft. You'll almost certainly have to be good at both. But what are some of your worries about Artifact, and how do you think maybe as a community we can help maybe work some of those out beforehand?
Let's see. Well, first part of that is my worries mainly around the economy. Right now we have access to all the cards, right? And once the game comes out and that's taken away, it's going to be interesting to see what the community values as like the must-have cards as people are opening more and more packs. I assume it's just like going to be rares and things like that, but yeah, I'm worried about being able to like get all the cards that I want in like if I were to play constructed, to be able to even have access to those, because it's going to require like pretty like pricey entry level,
right?
So interesting to see where that goes. And I'm wondering if there's also going to be options to grind without having to pay to get those cards or like rewards, because one thing that I think Valve is really great at is just adapting the game to include more and more stuff that the community wants, or would be more fun to like kind of retain people playing the game. When Dota first came out, there wasn't too much like incentive other than just like continuing to play and then like grinding MMR. But once they introduced more things like Cavern Crawl, which is just like kind of a mode that allows you to have challenges, or like the tipping, things like that, I think there's so much room for like introducing things that would keep the game fresh. So I'm actually not too worried in general about that. There might just like, as the game first comes out, there might be some backlash or just like rage about how expensive certain things are.
Nerd rage incoming.
Exactly. And I don't know if there's much we can do to the second part of your question as a community, aside from just seeing where the dust settles and, putting our trust in Valve for making
all-knowing Valve
game. Yeah. I personally, like, having met them at PAX and everything, I have a lot of trust in them. They are a great team.
Yeah.
And you can tell also they're just, taking different approaches with being communicative with the community now. They have a Twitter person, which is already unheard of, right?
For Valve, right?
Yeah. So there's someone sitting on Twitter, having keeping a pulse on the community. I'm sure they are, of course, are seeing everyone and their dancing monkey charades
right.
and things like that. They know about this. But just have faith that they'll put forth a good product.
Right. And I think, and with Valve especially, at PAX, they were so welcoming and would answer any question you had. It was hey, how come we don't have a tutorial? And they were like, well, you know how much content's going to be put out on day one? Everyone's going to skip our tutorial anyway. So, we'll let content producers make the tutorial. Where I was concerned, I was like, man, how are we going to stream this game? It's so hard. They were like, that's every game. When a new game comes out, there's people who are going to be really good and you'll understand enough to get by. And if you're a new player, you'll just get in on its own. And they were like, it feels like it'll be more exciting than your average Magic the Gathering situation because the GUI is much better than let's say Magic Online. But on your side, let's say you got an invite to the $1 million tournament. Okay. Let's say you were just a special invite, you're in, but they also said you could choose between being in the tournament or casting the tournament. Which one would you go to? You can't have both.
I would pick casting.
Oh, casting over the shot at $1 million.
Yeah. I just don't think the competitive lifestyle is for me. Definitely, that's what a lot of people are gunning for. And I don't want to discredit that or anything, but my personal preference is just I love watching the game and just thinking about what can be done from both sides versus just being in the hot seat and just the mental stress.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be able to put up with that much, or just being able to play that much. Definitely need to have the aptitude and just the stamina to do that. And I just can't say it's for me.
Well, it's funny you said that because when I first saw you, I was doing some video around I guess the east side of the stage at PAX, and I turned the corner and I saw you playing, and you were just game mode. You were just focused in. Yeah. There was no more smiles, no more laughs. It was we're getting down to business. And so I assumed that you were just super hardcore. So it's kind of funny that you say you know what, that's not really me. In game, yes, I'm going to win. I'm going to focus. But overall, I don't know if I want to be going down that road, because I think that speaks to a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people who love the game and really want to play, but they're not. I guess I always call myself a degenerate card game player because I travel around the world. I spend all this time playing, and it requires a certain level of sacrifice to do well. And I think a lot of people really don't want to make that kind of sacrifice. I don't want to play 60 hours a week. I don't. I love Artifact, but casting that much,
commitment.
Yeah, that's crazy. And when you have a family and if you have kids or a wife or a husband or multiple husbands or multiple whatever it is, you got to focus on your family too. But I guess for you, we're talking about being a caster, but what's your ideal? If a year from now you have been in the Artifact scene, things like that, what's your dream board of where would Fwosh be a year from now? Or would we still be Fwosh? Would we be Karen at that point? What's the alter ego? How do we differentiate?
I think I'm fine with just still staying as Fwosh. And honestly, if you were to tell me a year from now I'm even in fact, that's okay too. I would just hope that I tried my best to just, kind of get out there and I mostly just, want to be a resource to the community as well. Hopefully what I'm saying or any insights I offer, as I continue to learn the game and things like that, are insightful and just something that can be taken away and then applied to their own gameplay, stuff like that. If I somehow manage to become whatever I say just doesn't really hold water, then that's fine too. It just means I'm not a good fit for the overall mental state of the game or how to think about it, and that's fine. But I want to just see how far I can go with it. Ideally, maybe I would still want to be like involved. I would love to just keep casting because I think it's just super fun and a good skill to have too. I think just
Hmm.
like being able to talk about like a game or just like any subject for an extended period of time and still have like valuable insight. So would love to for that to happen, but if not, like we'll just see where it goes. I'm kind of just being experimental myself.
Well, you've got a good outlook on
Mhm.
that. You're like, you know what? If I fail miserably, whatevs. If I'm succeeding, whatevs. I'm good. Life is great.
Life is great.
Well,
Yeah,
no, but
I have to say.
that's a good way to look at it because then,
Mhm.
if you just try your hardest and kind of let things fall where they may,
Mhm.
it's probably a lot less stressful, right? Like because for all these pro players, like so, Team Liquid will have their pro team but their like
Mhm.
livelihood depends on being good, right? And being
Oh yeah,
entertaining
for sure.
and their
Mhm.
numbers and all of that. So there's a lot of stress that goes behind playing. And they've got their nicknames on their jersey, you know what I mean? But speaking
Yeah.
of nicknames, where did your nickname come from? Because I thought for like a quarter of a second it could be your name, and then I was like, "There's no way. There's like literal
Oh,
no
Fwosh.
way that that's her real name."
Yeah.
But so where did the nickname come from?
The nickname actually came from middle school, like after I was sick of being like Dragon Girl 4321 on Neopets or whatever, just like going through all these weird, edgy names. Dark Oblivion, I think, was one too.
Oh,
Just
baby,
like
Dark
I was,
Oblivion.
I'm done with this. I need like a short, maybe preferably 5-letter name. I would like to buy the domain as well, and that's just gonna be it. I'm gonna be that for like forever. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna make random sounds until something sticks. And so Fwosh was just one of them. Or I think it started as like Fwoosh, just like the sound effect. I was like, I'll just take away an O to make it 5 letters. So that's pretty much it. I think there are other contenders, Huku and Thwomp, but that's
Thwomp.
like a
Oh
Mario character.
man, I mean
So
I don't know how I can stand up to Dark Oblivion.
Dark
But
Oblivion,
that seems
yes.
like that's one
Those
hell
were
of
the
a pet name
days.
right there. Like next time I see you, I swear to God, it'd be like, hey, Dark
It's
Oblivion, what up,
Dark
girl?
Oblivion.
Hey, what up,
Yeah, no
Dio?
thanks. So Fwosh it
Like,
was.
yeah, like I think that's
Mhm.
pretty cool. But yeah, I think it's Artifact has been really good. I think to
Mhm.
most people, we see more people, kind of trickling into the beta as it goes along.
Mhm.
But November 28th, right? That's our launch date. And what do you feel like when the NDA drops? What's your plan? Like, are you going to be doing just a ton of content? Are you going to be streaming a bunch, doing videos? We're going to work on a rap video for Artifact. Like, what's the plan?
I would love to stream if that's what's gonna be like. It really depends on the timing. So happens I'm planning to go to Japan, and so right around Thanksgiving time,
Hey,
I'll be back like on the 25th or something. So um, if the NDA is lifted by then, I would stream to cast the game and just like watch people play and talk about the decisions being made. I believe there's some things going on, but that's also up in the air,
right?
like with BTS, things like that. If they have something and they're happy to have me, I would be happy to go. So it kind of all depends in the coming months as the plans fall into place. But the idea is, yeah, to be as much involved as possible and just try to get some good practice casting the game in.
Well, I don't want to look at you as a competitor, my competitor,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of cool because I see all of these great streamers like you and Slacks and everybody, and I'm not certain who's going to stay doing
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Artifact because there's a lot of risk to it, right? Like, I mean, I think in your
Totally.
case you don't maybe have as much of a risk where like you can do Artifact stuff and it's not going to like damage your brand, right? Like you're not bringing
Mm-hmm.
over all your Hearthstone people or all of your Dota 2 people to a brand new game. But
Mm-hmm.
if for the people who are, what do you feel like I guess what are your thoughts about it? I guess in general about people who are coming from new games, just going all in like Stanislav and
Yeah.
trying Artifact. Like what does that mean to you?
I think it's great. Like, honestly, this is the best time to be doing that. All those people on Reddit and Discord just fiending over the game constantly, playing TTS, stuff
Yes.
like that. I really admire their spirit, and yeah, I would encourage them to go for it because this is the beginning of a game, just like kind of when Dota started in that alpha period. That's like where some of the pros just came to light, right? Like Dendi, we have them just like forever now. So yeah, it's very possible someone that we know is just going to be the next Dendi of Artifact.
Right.
And I would love to see that happen. So the more people, the better. You know, chances we'll get some like great talent. And yeah, just do your best. Honestly, I personally go with the mentality of just keeping, you know, not sinking everything into it. Like if
Right.
it's end all make all, like kind of just like with your pro career, that's going to be devastating if you don't get lucky, if you're not like, you know, the one to make it. So just do your best, I think. And just be prepared to accept any outcome is just going to be my main advice to those people as well, because I know it's going to be, you know, a very slim number of people who get to make that like pedestal. So there's going to be a lot of people who fall along the way, and you know, everybody's gunning for the same goal, but I really want them to make it. There's only going to be a set number of spots. So
yeah, we're all in it together. Until we're not, right? Like until some of us have put their mortgages on the line and all of that to be successful. But all right. So last thing about draft is there's also this kind of concern about that there's a lot of basic heroes that are better than heroes that you draft. And in my mind, that doesn't really bug me too much, because I think a lot of maybe heroes that aren't quite as good as basic heroes still have a place in a deck, depending on what you're playing. But do you feel like that is an issue, that there are too many heroes that aren't as good as the basic, or should basics just be like the worst hero? Like you would never want to play a basic unless you're totally desperate.
No, I think you're right. I think there is some cases where there's some synergy that you want to have, maybe in like some perfect draft where you're depriving specifically red blue of mana, or you want to pick Lion and get like mana drain, and they have like squishy blue heroes that like all have less than 8 health, and you can like just cast Finger on them or something. But yeah, I think that every hero has a place right now. There's nothing that I really see and I'm just like keep that hero away, maybe except for Meepo. But, like,
right. Meepo, no good.
Yeah, although, you know, Meepo is still pretty strong, like in certain situations. Like,
wait, hold on. Explain to me Explain to me the certain situation where Meepo is strong, because I've been trying to break Meepo in draft for, I don't know, as long as I've been in the draft, and I haven't been able to get it done. So what is your idea that you can actually maybe share about Meepo?
If you have a way to get gold, for one, to like buff up your Meepos, and also be very conservative as to like when you want to actually cast Divided We Stand, because it might actually be better for you to hold on to it and develop one Meepo first to make sure, or like kind of go in stages. Like, all right, this Meepo set, he's kind of like, you know, he's got his Traveler's Cloak, he's, you know, tankier than usual. Yeah, then you want to cast your next Divided We Stand so that you can start developing that Meepo. And then ideally you'll also want to postpone their deaths. So like if you can have both those Meepo die on one turn, and then you still have a blue hero on the board, and then you cast another Divided We Stand, then you have this cycle of constant Meepos. So you'll always have a blue hero. And that's great for if you have like strong blue cards like Annihilation or like Eclipse, that you just always want to make sure you have a blue hero to cast. So if you have like constant Meepos coming in, you'll just always have that. And another thing that Meepo brings to the table is that he's just a body. Like, he's a stronger creep. And if your opponent is trying to widen a board, or just like maybe there's a lane that's like very key, and then you might be losing if you don't have those key like bodies to block them, Meepo's great for just showing up and then dying. Like,
what up?
If he can just block the final blow, that's saved me a lot of times with Meepo.
Oh, you just said saved you a lot of times, as in you've played Meepo more than once in draft.
I've tried, yeah. I was like, you know, Meepos are rare. He must be good. There's something Valve isn't like.
There's a reason they made it rare.
We have to discover it ourselves.
Yeah. Well, because if they had it as a common, can you imagine like just the 5 Meepo deck or something just ludicrous? It's like, Meepos. I made 80 gold this turn. I can't buy anything anymore. Like, but no, I think it's cool because there are a lot of hidden strategies still. Like, we haven't come anywhere close to breaking draft or breaking constructed. Like, once everybody gets in, I think it's going to be a whole like just it's just going to be a wave of information, and that will catch people up really fast. And so that's all the question I have about draft. But when it comes to people feeling like they're behind, now there is a level of being behind because obviously, you know, you've got to get your reps in, you've got to just kind of learn from your mistakes and things like that. But what would you say to someone who is like totally disenchanted with the idea that the alpha testers have been in it for months and they're going to be so far behind? Do you think that they're going to be behind a long time? Do you think is it going to be a lot easier for them to learn? Just, I guess, what is your ideas on the new players coming in?
I think a lot of people are over-indexing on how time is a factor of how good you are at the game. Because this is the only thing anyone has to go off of right now. Like, of course, any advantage an alpha tester has is just going to be like, you know, seen as like, oh man, they're able to actually play the game for this long. Of course, they're going to get into like the $1 million tourney. But people learn things in different ways. They have different takeaways from each game. Like, you could be like potentially learning so much more from one game than one person in the alpha. It's really going to come down to like skills that you develop as a player, and I think time is something that can just be, you know, substituted for by just how you see your games and how you learn. So it's just like with anything. Like, if you told me like if any subject could be just learned like just by banging your head at it for like more time, like and you know, someone else like who starts 6 months later is like not going to be as good in like a year, then I'd call you out on that. That's
right.
like, it's just not going to be true. I think if anything, it's very high likelihood that, you know, very few alpha testers will get even into the tournament. There's going to be just so many new faces, new talent that's just going to pick up the game really quickly. They're going to be grinding it. They're just going to be like pouring over their replays. And yeah, I think there's just a lot of potential for to just break into the scene and build their own meta.
Yeah, and I think that's I really just try to reassure folks that if you really want to pour the time in, you will make up the ground quickly. Like, and because most people who are in the alpha right now are not going to be pro artifact players. Like, they're playing because it's fun, but a lot of them are going to return to Gwent or return to Hearthstone or whatever it is, because if you're a pro Gwent player, right, like you might want to come over to artifact, but you still, like I said, you have a big risk before you can make that 100% switch. And but we have about 20 minutes before this giveaway is going to happen, but I wanted to take a couple questions from the chat if you have time, or I don't know if you've got to, you know, head to your next important thing. But I wanted to see if chat had any questions that I could get asked for you and kind of go from there. So chat, if you got a question for Miss Fwosh, or maybe Mrs. Maybe she got married this weekend. I didn't know.
No.
But okay, so somebody asked about your favorite color. So I guess what's your favorite color in Constructed, and what's the favorite color maybe combination in Limited?
Favorite color is blue. I think it's
God
just,
bless you. God bless you.
The strongest cards and like the most fun to play too. So definitely blue. But as far as combinations go in draft, I think blue green is the most reliable and consistent. So like if you manage to get like a solid green deck or green cards that allow you to keep your blue guys alive, it's very hard to go against that, I think. So I do like that blue green combination. But black has started to grow on me as well. Draft recently, I've definitely wanted to practice black more, so I try to index on drafting black. And this is very different from when you're in a tournament and you're just kind of just taking whatever you're given. But sometimes you're just like, all right, I'm going black because I want to practice it. So I pick out all the black cards, and I think it's pretty strong in draft as well. But yeah, blue's my all-time favorite, I think.
Oh, well, God. I mean, I knew I liked you before, but now that you're saying that blue is your jam, you know, I like you even more than that. But so the other question is, what resource do you think that current players overrate? So, you know, we've got mana, we've got initiative, we've got cards, all of that. Like, I guess let's make it two parts. What's the one resource that you think new players will overrate? And then what resource do you think that people just in general, like once they played a while, will overrate?
It might be the same answer, and I think that's hero life. is
Right.
that the resource? But being able to keep your hero alive in a board, I think sometimes gets overrated, and like it's sometimes just so good to let them die. Like, and many times before, when I'm playing against an opponent, I am expecting them to want them to die, and then they end up healing their hero, and then I'm like sitting back, I'm like, oh,
Good.
that's a misplay.
Yeah.
Like
You
you
should
don't
let that
want
guy
your
die.
hero to exactly like you want it to die. You want me to just take this lane so that you can have that hero resource to deploy in another lane and ideally win that one. So that's something I love to see. Like when people
Yeah.
make that, I'm hoping that the next game they realize like what they've done there. Like I know there's definitely one in the last tournament where it was just like, oh man, they should have let their Lycan die there because now I'm just gonna run this lane down. So yeah, I think that's probably the answer for both. Like just early game when people see their heroes die. Like I think you've heard the thing before where some Hearthstone players were just conceding when their
Right.
heroes died.
Yeah, they're like, I
The
lost three
first two
heroes in the
turns.
first
I
turn. I'm
lost.
conceding. Are you
Yeah,
crazy? Like,
it's really not the worst thing. Like sometimes you just want the ability to be able to choose where your heroes get to go, and if they can go somewhere safe, then all the better. I would say it's just mostly hero life is
yeah,
the
your
resource.
hero. Yeah, and I think I was really concerned when I first started. Like, I would have my heroes place. My initial turn placement would be really poor, and I would lose like 2 of my 3 heroes. And then I realized, like over time, there's plenty of games where I've killed all of their heroes on turn 1, and they still were in the game. It's not like they just got completely like destroyed. Because now, if you lose all your heroes in the mid game, like if it's like mana turn 6 and you get all your heroes killed, you're probably going to lose the game, right? But like if on turn 1, even if you lost all your heroes, it's not as bad. One, because then you can actually place them into the lanes you want to be in. But yeah, I definitely overrated when my stuff dies. But there was another question, because you said that you weren't going to really be focusing too much on like the pro scene and competing in it. How do you see the casual side forming? Like when somebody just wants to challenge a friend, or if they're gonna like, would you like to see like a Friday Night Magic where it's like super casual but you can still win prizes? And like, what do you see coming of that?
Oh man, I think that's gonna just be so much fun because there's a lot of modifiability, which funny with the keyword and all, but to the draft aspect of the game. So I think there's probably going to be eventually ways for us to change the rules up, or even if not, like adhere to your own set of rules, and then have that kind of community, like micro communities build decks together. I think if you can have like a Discord setup, just like draft with friends, that's already like so much fun. I would love to just spend a night like drafting under certain rules, like red black only, doesn't matter what you get, like you have to pick Keef or something like that.
Yeah, 5 Keef deck.
5 Keef deck, yeah, like just see where it goes, and then have like a tournament set up for that. Commons only, I think, has been done before too, which is just like a riot. And so I'm excited to see like what kind of special modes come up, because there's just so much room for making that.
I think that would be really interesting, like to do like a little side draft tournament where it's commons only.
Yes.
And that would definitely change how you looked at so much stuff. And I mean, the good thing about Artifact is commons are still good. Like it's not like there's this situation where like all the commons are just trash and you don't have to, play them at all. But it's really, deck construction goes a long way. And one of the questions was, do you have like a certain creep, like spell to creep ratio that you try to play in your decks? Like do you look for a certain number of creeps to be in every deck to keep pressure up?
Well, in draft, yeah, it depends like what kind of colors you have. Like if you have blue, maybe creeps don't matter as much because you're just trying to like clear all the time anyways, and the lanes will be so narrow that you don't need creeps. But I try to like at least have more, like around like 5 is maybe the minimum, I would say, for creeps, and like even spells like related to creeps, like dimensional portal, like that. Because I think one of the weaknesses I saw in Lumi's deck, which was like the only way that I was able to take one game off of him, was he had only 3 creeps in his entire
Lord.
deck. Yeah, and so I was like, as long as I can kill heroes, I make a path for mine. Then I'm able to hit the tower and I'm good. But again, once I faced the opponent who had all these creeps, I think at least 10, it was just impossible. So
Yeah, that's
really
really
depends on
rough.
what kind of strategy you're going for, but I'd say 5 is a nice minimum.
Now, I guess the question then to expound on that a little bit is why do you
Mhm.
want 5? Like, why is it important to have a good creep base in your draft deck?
Sometimes it's just like key to saving a lane. If you have a creep that can block an immense amount of damage coming through, that's just game winning. And so I think people discount like the potential too of like the arrows being in your favor.
Right.
So if you have like this wide lane, you can potentially use one creep to block three. Like the value that you get out of that is just too much to not include at least like 5 creeps in your deck.
Yeah.
I'm saying 5 arbitrarily. It could just be like, it's more than 3. I would say that. But those are kind of your lifesavers in certain situations,
Yeah, and I
or
think
even just
too.
pushing the extra damage.
Well, yeah, it's like creeps are
Mhm.
one of the very few. Well, obviously, there's heroes, but your creeps are repeatable sources of damage,
Mhm.
and it's even though you have like these 2/4s that come into play, like when you have more creeps and you can start pushing a lane without having a hero in it, it
Mhm.
becomes so much more important because heroes are a limited resource unless you have Meepo, right?
Yep.
So you want to make sure that you have, like you were saying, 5, 6, 7 creeps in your deck, and especially if you're in a go wide strategy, you might even have more than that if you're playing like the
Yeah.
triple
Mhm.
Disciple of Nevermore or double Oath decks. Like they all want
Mhm.
all of that. The other question that somebody was talking about, I just passed it. Is let's say you opened your first booster in a draft. What
Mhm.
card do you want to see? Like which hero are you like 100% gunning to see, and which hero do you just never want to see in your first pack?
First pack. Of course, I guess there's like a hero from each color that you want to see. Like, is just too good for red. Blue. Let's see. Who would I want to see for blue? Kana, I think for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't even know why
I
Kana
was gonna
didn't
say
have
like
any.
were you like thinking it was some other person? Like you're like I want
Yeah, I
Prelix.
think I was just like going through the weird ones first. Not Skywrath, not Outworld. Like, yeah. So Kana is definitely green. I'd say Chen or Omni Knight are both good. I would hate to see Rix,
Ugh.
especially for the first like hero card. Usually that's going to be like your best hero too, like the first one you're presented with, because it's like as the draft goes around, the people are
Mhm.
going to take the better heroes. So if I see Rix, I'm just like, I don't want to build a deck around Rix just quite yet. Like if I had something like maybe a Thunderhide or like a Apotheosis Blade, like maybe I'd want to consider Rix, but it's too early to consider him if I see him in the first draft. Um, and what
Black.
color am I saying? Black. Black. I like Phantom Assassin. And I feel like there's another black hero that I always try to get.
Lich
Maybe I need
maybe.
to look at the hero list.
Yeah.
It might be Sorla.
Oh,
Trying to
with
see
the salt
which.
ladders going.
Yeah, assault ladders and just being able to hit the tower. Ooh, actually, maybe it's Lich. Of
It is
course,
Lich. Okay, I was gonna say.
Lich is great. Yeah.
Now, what makes Lich good for you? Like, why do you think I? So there's a lot of obviously every color has heroes that we want to see, but I guess why would you want to
Mhm.
see, let's say, a Lich, and then once you tell me why you want to see Lich, I want to know your top overall hero, like amongst any color.
Amongst any color. It might be Lich, because he's a pretty tanky black, with like 9 health. So he's already like most likely survive the early game. And his card and signature are just extremely good too. Like, um, one of the only like signatures I think that give initiative. Maybe Tide is one, but
Yeah, but that's nowhere on the
yeah,
same level.
yeah, exactly. Just like he gets to kill a whole wave or like just board clear with initiative. That's just like so strong. And then the sacrifice also just gives you a reliable out too. So like if you want to abandon a lane and draw some extra cards while you're at it, Black already has very few tools to draw those cards, and Lich provides that and also gives you a free like exit as well. So being able to kill a hero that's in your lane that you've already won is pretty powerful.
Yeah, and somebody else asked about do you feel like there's too many cards in draft that aren't playable that are more niche? Like should there be more playable cards in draft, or are you pretty happy with how many cards are main deckable in draft right now?
I'm pretty happy with the balance right now. I think there has to be some like bad or
Yeah.
mediocre cards for you to really, you know, factor in on your decision process. So like it would be extremely hard if everything was like overpowered or
Yeah.
like all good choices. So I think I like the balance right now. And there's definitely situations where you want to pick crappier cards because like maybe you do need a little bit more survivability or like that one extra bad creep or something like that. So
Okay, well then last
yeah,
question
I
I
think it's
have
a
is how do you feel about being able to see your opponent's deck? Because
oh
obviously that is it's a totally different mindset
yeah.
from like I've played Magic a long time and I wish every game we could just like see deck lists of each other because then
Hmm.
I could have a more developed game plan and I think the games end up being more fair because
Yeah.
you're not playing around cards that you know may not exist. But on
Hmm.
the same token, there is this issue that there isn't surprises, like you know what's in their deck.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the idea of seeing your opponent's deck?
I feel about it differently depending on the lens. So through competitive, like a tournament stance, I think it's definitely fair ground to use to see the deck lists. Especially since you know you want to know what you're playing around. It's just like whole another way of playing, and it involves like a lot more skill and thinking. But through fun, I don't want to see deck lists. So when I'm playing like just Sunday morning, playing some Gauntlet or whatever, I don't open it ever because I want to be surprised. That's part of the fun, I think. Um, and you know it sucks like you know it's kind of just like open to everyone so if my opponent might be looking at what I have but personally for me to derive the most fun from just playing draft I just don't want to know and it's just like more fun to just kind of play out my cards without having to just overthink it too much.
Yeah, because when you have that
Mhm.
open, when you hit the button for deck list, all of a sudden your brain goes into overdrive.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't help it. Like, you
Exactly.
definitely cannot help it. Like, it's just one of those things that you just have gotten into this habit of if you see the list, you automatically go down that rabbit hole. You start thinking about what their game plan is, what their outs
Hmm.
are, how do I play around it, and it does become a little less fun if you're
Yeah.
trying to be casual. Like, and sometimes
Hmm.
I'll be up at like 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, I want to play some Gauntlet. And I just don't have the energy to look at their deck list. And I know it's incorrect, right? Like, I know I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do it, but like, I just can't bring myself to use the brain power if I'm just
Hmm.
hanging out.
Yeah,
And like
once you open it it's over, you're
it's
just
over
like
because you can't,
staring at all their cards playing around every
no.
situation. It's yeah.
And what's even worse about it is you can't just do it once. It's not like you
Yeah.
can like in the beginning of the game, you're like, oh, look at their deck list. I won't look at it, you know, through.
Yeah.
No, you always will do it. You'll be like, oh,
You'll always do it.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go back. So you have to like either do it or don't. And but we have about 7 minutes until we're gonna do
Hmm.
this drawing. So I want to let you go, but tell everybody just how to reach you, what you can. I don't know if you have a Patreon for your art or what, but please let's hear it.
Hmm.
What do you got going on?
Sure. Well, I guess you can follow me on Fwoshy. Yeah, unfortunately, someone took Fwosh.
Oh,
So, yeah, Twitter, Twitch is also Fwoshy. So I'll probably be. Right now, I'm doing just very casual streams where I don't even talk, where I'm just providing background music as I draw. So, mostly art streams, piano streams. But aside from that, no Patreon at the moment. There's like a dead one for parodies, but I'm kind of like semi-retiring. Don't tell Dota that.
uh
But
oh.
um, so yeah, Twitter and Twitch. Thanks for
Well,
having me, Rob.
no, of course I would love to have you anytime, and hopefully I will try to recruit you to do some casting because we can all use more practice on the casting side. So whenever we have some tournaments, I'll be hitting up them DMs to
All right.
see if we can get a cool little pairing going on and do some of that. But again, thank you for your time. I know it's a Sunday morning and it's still a little bit early, but definitely happy to have you on. So
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was definitely a pleasure and enjoyed talking. Yeah, I'm really hoping that you start like casting too, and I pair with you sometime.
yeah, we'll get on it. So listen, again, just have a good day, and I'll see you maybe in the beta later today. We can get
Yeah,
some games in. Actually, I haven't played any constructed, so maybe
that's
we
true.
can.
Yeah, I'm just in Gauntlet.
Yeah, I'm just in Gauntlet
Yeah,
mode, so I don't know anything about that, but I'm definitely down to play later. So we'll talk to you soon.
sounds good. All right,
Bye.
take care. Bye.
Well, it's always nice to have other people come on and just really just talk about just talk about their situation, because we all see it so differently. It's like, it's so insane. But we've got about 5 minutes left before we do our drawing, and it's kind of cool. I mean, we don't have that many people, so you actually have a pretty good chance of winning today. So here's the deal: is you will need to make sure you're a follower in the channel, on the Twitch channel. No big deal, easy peasy. You don't have to retweet anything today, nothing like that. Don't worry about it. All you have to do is make sure your Twitch account is at least 30 days old, and be a follower, and type !RobAJG, and you will get a ticket, and I will show the drawing online so that there is no worry that it's one of my many cousins or one of Lumi's cousins. And yeah, that's how we do. But we've got, again, about 4-ish minutes before we close it. So I want to talk a little bit about the economy side again, because it is definitely a hot topic. And somebody just asked, how do you think future expansions will affect the economy? I think the big deal is we don't really have a good grasp on what things are going to cost. We don't have a good grasp as to what are the top end cards going to cost on the secondary market. If the top end card is like a $10 card, decks are going to be very cheap because there's no mythic rarity in Artifact. So you're looking at having a lot of rares in circulation. And so if we can be in that, let's say, $8 to $10 range as the top card, you should be able to play most decks for, less than, let's say, $80, only because you've got these situations where your most important cards in your deck are normally going to be your heroes, because that's 4 cards. It's your hero plus the 3 signatures, and you only can play 1 in constructed. So you don't have this worry of, like in Magic, where you have to have 4 of the best rares. Then the same thing goes into your constructed decks. Is like if you have an improvement or a spell or something, you only need 3 of them. So I feel like we could be in a neighborhood of having a top tier deck that caps out around $100. And if you have your top decks being 100, that means your budget decks could easily be in like the $10 range, the $12 range, $20. And that makes, I think, for a little bit healthier economy in general. Somebody said that their calculation tops out about $14, and some are at 10. And I think that's a pretty good metric. And the other thing about it too, and this is my advice, this is not official, but in the very beginning of the game, I think it actually is going to end up being cheaper to buy cards that people don't know are good yet, obviously, because once there's tournaments and you can check deck lists and there's a lot of net decking going on, then they're going to be looking at those specific cards in those decks to be able to buy, and those are going to have more value. But there's going to be this idea of, I can get in on some of these other cards really cheap. Every card that's under 20 cents, you should buy your playset instantly, because the idea of it spiking to, even to $4, if you go from 20 cents to $4, that's a big jump. So for me, I have my little side money that I put aside to make sure that I could buy every single cheap card in the game for the playsets. And then the cards that are more expensive, some of them I might have an idea if I think that's going to be good and it'll hold its value. But I think a lot of the really expensive, I think there's more of a chance that a card will start off really expensive and then lose some value. So if it's expensive in the beginning, I'm going to wait on it. Whereas everything else that's cheap, I'm just going to buy it all. And because I think there's a really good chance that a 25-cent card could push up to like an $8 card or a $10 card. And not that $30 is a big deal, but it's still why would I want to spend $30 on cards that I could have spent 60 cents on? That doesn't make any sense. Do you think it's better to buy a few packs and then find a deck, or buy individual cards and then just start buying individual cards? I think for the most part, that's what people are going to do. There's some people who will just buy, 100 boosters and just open 100 boosters. And I think we're going to learn more about how the rarities of cards are distributed to know if that's a good plan or not. So in my case, I'm probably going to just go through and buy all of the cheap cards first, and then see what the resale market looks like, and see if people start getting nervous, right? So like, let's say Axe starts as like an $18 card and people start listing at 18, they're not selling, and then they start kind of going down and down just because they get nervous, right? It's kind of like how the PAX keys were. It was like, oh, at first, they were selling them for $20, and then as they became more scarce, like they started going up way in price. So I think I want to do a little bit of both. But it looks like we've got about 10 seconds left on entries. So if you want in, you better make sure that you've got about 5 seconds to get your ticket. And yeah, there we go. It is now closed. We are closed. So let's pick the wiener. And again, here's the rules. You had to be a follower, and that's all you had to do today. Just be a follower in the Twitch chat. Nothing else. And next week we will have a subscriber only stream, or excuse me, not stream, a subscriber only giveaway. And yeah, because that's just I really want to make sure that we have something specific for the subs. So let's pick a winner, and then I will account for you guys to make sure that we know it's a month old. Pick a winner. Was this AQ4 Regia? I don't know how to say that. That's who we picked. Do we have? Can we get a check to see if the account is a month old? And they still have to be here. They've got about 30 seconds, so they're good on the how long their account has been in. And we're gonna give them, like I said, about 20 more seconds and see if they show up. They are not here. I do not see them. And yep. All right. They're not here. Sorry. You got to respond. You got to respond like in 30 seconds. So sorry. Goodbye, friends. Going. Remove them. If it would let me remove this winner, I would do so. There we go. All right. RIP. R-I-P. Let's try it again. Boy Akasha. And again, we give him that 30 secs. Oh, 1 month and 30 days, 2 hours ago, barely, and still not here. Got about 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Aw, rip, boy Akasha. See ya. Keith, or Zeeth. Where are you, Zeeth? And, because I don't care. We'll pull them till we get somebody who makes sure that they're in here, and they only got 30 seconds. And, hey, we got an answer. Zeeth is in here. Zeeth has gotten pulled, and I'm gonna make sure that I get him that key. So just to let you know, for next week, we will obviously to be doing more interviews. I'm hoping I can get Wife Coach to come on and talk, because she's also done very well. And a few other folks. So the stream schedule is to be doing Friday nights, Saturday morning, and Sunday mornings. And you can find me at RobAJG on all the socials. And so if you ever have questions about how cards work, or you want me to rate a deck for you, whatever, I'm willing to do all of that. And also, if you're a content creator and you are looking to, you need a guest or whatever, we're all in this together, and I want to help. So that's it for today. I will see you guys next week, unless we have a surprise stream during the week. And it's always nice. And again, thank you to Fwosh for coming on, and we will see you next week.